Oh man. All right, guys. Happy Memorial Day. So I wasn't streaming yesterday. It was like the battle. I got sent like the Battlefield 6 beta playtest, and honestly, freaking flippin' fire, dude. Flippin' fire. One of the best freaking betas that I've played so far. It's pretty good. It feels exactly like what we wanted to, you know. Um, it was so much fun, man. Oh man, I don't even want to spoil it, dude. You could like Well, I mean, I'm obviously not gonna say anything that you guys haven't seen in the trailers and stuff. But you could actually like drag people out of combat. And you like res them. It's fucking sweat, dude. It's fucking sweat. Damn and strange. But yeah. Let's say. Yeah, I had a lot of shit going on yesterday. I didn't really get home till like late. Like the girlfriend slept over. And then we left to go get shit. Like food or like 1 and come back home to like 4 in the afternoon. And I had to troubleshoot the Battlefield beta and everything, so yeah, my bad. But we're here now, and that's all that matters. Watch later. Let's go to our watch later, and alright. Before I even do anything, I just want to make sure that my mic and everything is working, cause I did update my drivers recently, so this one. Oh my god. Ugh. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yep. We're good. All right. Shadow thing. Yeah. Damn. Fuck. This is what happens when you don't keep track of what you were fucking doing. Then.
Out. Their land was taken, often with army wasn't gonna trust them. So instead of trust, they brought in guns and soldiers. Pakistan's armed a bold move that lit the entire region on fire. But who is the BLA? And why are they so
Yeah, BLA. Yeah. We did this already. We did this. Oh, sorry, sure. Just like discombobulated right now. So I want to cover the business basic shit first. They're trying to delete his channel. Wait, hold on.
Hey guys, so I apologize that this is not our usual video, but I wanted to bring something to everyone's attention because I get a feeling that this may be one of our last videos. So I figured I might as well
Don't say
explain
that, dude.
everything that we're dealing with behind the scenes
No,
in
it's
case
not.
this channel is deleted. You see, just a few days ago, we started a brand new channel where we started uploading compilation of our videos. Basically taking multiple videos and making them into one long video so people can watch it in one sitting. Now, a lot of people already do this on YouTube, and we've been doing this here and there on this channel. But the reason we started a brand new channel dedicated to compilations is because we saw MrBeast do it. Now, even before seeing this channel from MrBeast, we had our YouTube partner pushing us to do longer videos and do more podcasts. They explained that YouTube is really growing on TV, so we should be focused on taking advantage of that growth by making longer and longer videos. So YouTube was telling us to do this. And then after seeing MrBeast, the biggest creator, do this, we figured we should do it too. And guess what? It worked. In just 3 days, channel had more than 100,000 views, and we were ready to apply for monetization. But then yesterday, the whole world fell apart. First, our monetization application was rejected, saying that we're just copying business basic videos, so we're not gonna get monetized. Now, I just figured this was a mistake. YouTube probably didn't realize that this was our second channel.
Man, YouTube literally just said, hey, dude, you're copying yourself. You can't do that.
But then, just a few hours after that denial, we got this email. We have reviewed your content and found severe or repeated violations of our spam, deceptive practices, and scams policy. Because of this, we have removed your channel from YouTube. We know this is probably a very upsetting news, but it's our job to make sure YouTube is a safe place for all. If we think channel severely violates our policies, we take it down to protect other users on the platform. But if you believe we have made the wrong call, you can appeal this decision. You'll find more information about the policy in question and how to submit an appeal below. Going forward, you won't be able to access, possess, or create any other YouTube channels. Now, we 100% believe that this is a mistake, but this last part is what's really freaking us all out. YouTube has this policy where if they delete one of your channels, they'll delete every single channel you have ever owned.
What the hell?
That means if this mistake by YouTube is not fixed, we'll lose the Business Basics channel too. A channel we have spent 7 years of our lives building up.
Yeah,
now, before I get to this next
dude.
part, I do want to put this disclaimer. A lot is at stake for
The
all
Wish
of
fighter
us,
jets.
so I'm 100% that we are not thinking straight. I wanted to
don't
put
think I
this
saw that
theory
one.
out here because this next theory is a little bit of a reach, but I do think there's something problematic going on here. Because
With the
first, YouTube
CCP?
told us our channel was using reused content and that's why they could not monetize it. Then YouTube said it was because we broke their spam and deceptive policy, okay? But then we contacted a YouTube support person and that person is giving us an entirely different reason. Here's the screenshot of the chat I had with the support specialist. I was able to check our resources and found out.
Misinformation policy. Yeah, dude, I literally called it. I literally called it, dude. It's probably China. I'm literally telling you, it's probably the CCP, dude. Wouldn't be surprised. That's probably why my videos haven't really been getting pushed on the algorithm when it comes to shit like this. Like, dude.
The channel in question was removed for misinformation policies. So this YouTube support person is giving us an entirely different reason.
I love how they're trying to remove Business Basics, but they won't do nothing about Hassan Diddler Piker. That shit is actually crazy
for
to
why
me.
channel was taken down. And now this is the third reason we have gotten in 3 instances from YouTube. Add to that, this is the 4th time YouTube has taken down one of our channels in the last 12 months. And every single time, the appeal never worked. It seems YouTube has this appeal feature, but no one actually looks at the channel closely even when you do.
Yeah, it's just like
Only
bull.
thing that seems to be working is making a Twitter post and getting a lot of people to just retweet that Twitter post. This is why I'm making this video, because we really do need your guys' help. If YouTube does not admit that they made a mistake with that other channel, that means this channel will be taken down too. So we have already made a tweet appealing to YouTube saying that they have made a mistake, and we have provided all the proof we can to make sure YouTube sees that this is clearly a mistake. Now this is where if you guys can please do us a big favor, especially if you have Twitter. If you can go to this tweet and just retweet it and tag
I do that, my
Team
boy. I'm
YouTube.
sorry.
Now I'll put a link to the tweet on the cards above and in the description below and in the pinned comment.
But everyone else, yo, if
All
you guys
we
do,
ask is you
we'll help
retweet
them
and
out.
tag Team YouTube, because unfortunately that's the reality of the world we're living in. YouTube doesn't really help us on YouTube, but they only help us if we go
yeah, they only
viral
help
on
on Twitter.
Now I'm praying that YouTube fixes their mistake, but there's a chance that YouTube decides to just keep the channel deleted, and in that case, this channel will be deleted in the future too. Now we did appeal this decision by YouTube, but they have never worked for us in the past. Only thing that works is raising hell on Twitter, but this is what YouTube said after this appeal. We have reviewed more Business Basics and confirmed it wasn't following our spam, deceptive practices, and scam policy. Your channel won't be put back on YouTube. We know this isn't the news you were hoping for, but we strive to create a safe community.
What? Do you think your channel could have been hacked? They started investigation before your desktop. If you were Business Basics and confirmed that it wasn't following our spam.
For everyone.
What the fuck, dude?
Now,
No,
the problem
YouTube
here
is on
is no
some
one actually
crazy
looked
shit.
at the appeal, because if they had looked at it, they would realize that the compilation channel was our channel. No one was stealing our content and breaking YouTube's guideline. And I have proof to show this. First, here are more compilation channels that other creators have on YouTube that are still up. So clearly, compilation channels are not against YouTube guidelines. Here you can see on your screen, which we have already shown you, Mr. Beast has a compilation channel. Then we have Sniper Wolf, who has a compilation channel too.
Oh my God,
and we also
fucking
have Stoke
Sniper
Twins,
Wolf.
who also have a compilation channel. And it's not just limited to these creators. Thousands of creators on YouTube have compilation channels. But for some reason, our compilation channel is against YouTube guideline.
Dude, it's not some reason, dude. It's because of the CCP, dude. Like, let's be real.
Now, this is where I want to talk about YouTube's appeal process, because it's broken. Either someone is purposefully targeting our channel because they don't like the videos we're making, or they're just not paying attention. They're not doing their jobs.
Oh, 100%.
Because here's something that happened just
Oh, they
a
just
few
don't like
days
the
ago.
videos you're making.
These are two videos that are exactly the same. Okay? And both of these videos were automatically demonetized by the YouTube automatic system. So we appealed it. Exactly the same
I'm
video.
telling you,
I want to
fucking
really
China, of
emphasize
course.
it. We didn't change anything. As you guys can see on your screen, the timestamp is 25 minutes, 21 seconds, 25 minutes, 21 seconds on both videos. Well, guess what? Both of the videos were reviewed by someone who reviews the appeals. One of them was reviewed and confirmed for advertisers, so it was all fine. We uploaded that video. The second video, this is exactly the same video. And this video was confirmed by the person who was reviewing the video that it's not suitable for advertisers. Exactly the same
Oh,
video.
yeah?
And they're saying one video is okay, one video is not okay. Same thing is now happening with the channel. We are doing the same thing that the thousands of other creators on YouTube are doing, but for some reason, our channel was deleted. We appealed it, and even then, the appeal didn't go through. No one even looked
That
at the
is so
appeal. No one
fucked.
looked at the explanation we provided in the appeal.
This is why, even if, like, you know, I did blow up or some shit, I would never solely just depend on YouTube, though. I would still have, like, a job. Even with Twitch, I would still have, like, still keep my job, dude. I don't trust these motherfuckers. Like, one day you're Gooch, and then, you know, the next day you post something that might ruffle some feathers, and then your whole livelihood gets fucked.
And again, this is not
Because
the
these
first
motherfuckers
time.
wanna
Like I
follow
said
their own
earlier,
agenda.
we have dealt with this multiple times
So they're
in
just being
just last
fair.
12 months. And every single time, the appeal didn't work, but going and raising hell on Twitter worked. This is exactly why we're making this video, because this time the stakes are higher than ever. We spent 7 years building this channel and could be deleted. That's why if you guys can please
Yeah,
take a second.
I mean, that'd be tight
Go
too,
to
dude.
Twitter, go to X, whatever you call it. I'll put the link down below. Just retweet it and tag
whatever you
Team
call
YouTube,
it.
because clearly this is a mistake and they're not paying attention. Now, another thing that could be also true is that we are getting targeted for the videos we are making. For the last year, we have covered many different things, from the Russian war to the Israeli war in Gaza to the trade war that's going on right now. More specifically, how President Trump is trying to protect the US markets from CCP's unfair practices. And it seems someone is not happy about it, because it's not just us. Many YouTubers who covered the CCP have complained how their videos are purposefully getting downvoted, are purposefully getting suppressed. All the while, pro-CCP content, anti-US content is rampant on YouTube. It seems like YouTube is boosting this. And now it seems YouTube is taking it one step forward. Now they're trying to just delete channels that are talking about the CCP, that are criticizing how
Yeah,
the
that's
Chinese
literally what
government
I've been
has
saying.
been taking advantage of US citizens and US markets.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
That's
I
why
realize
it's
this
literally
sounds
fuck
really
CCP,
panicky,
dude.
but
Fuck
hopefully
'em.
you guys understand
It's
what's
not
at stake
panicky,
for
dude.
us.
It's literally
This is
just
the
the
only
truth.
job I've had for the last 5-6 years.
Like, this is insane to me, dude. We're literally getting silenced by a fucking communist country overseas, dude. Why the fuck do they have a say in what we post or whatever? Like, fuck them, dude. If they don't like what we're saying, maybe they should stop doing that thing. I don't
we
fucking
have
know.
a lot more people who depend on the channel on top of just bringing the truth to you guys. So if you guys can
Yeah, literally. I'm one of those people that depend on the channel because I get most of my information from most, not all, but I get a lot of my information from Business Basics. It's like, in my opinion, they're like an information channel. They're like an educational channel. So it's like, what the hell, dude?
And India's
crazy.
Ministry of External Affairs has firmly rejected China's efforts to
¿Qué?
Me buscan los especiales ahí.
Oh my god.
rename locations in the Indian
that's
state
so
of Arunachal Pradesh.
China skipped a confidential G20 meeting held in India on Sunday, as per our sources. The meeting was held in Itanagar, the capital city of Arunachal Pradesh, a state that China claims is a part of Tibet.
20 Indian soldiers have been killed fighting with Chinese troops on a disputed border region, according to the Indian army and government sources.
China just launched an invasion of India, not with missiles, tanks, or troops, but with maps, propaganda, and 1,000 tiny cuts. On May 12th, China's Ministry of Civil Affairs casually announced that they were renaming 27 different locations in Arunachal Pradesh. a massive Indian state stretching across nearly 90,000 square kilometers. A state that's been undeniably Indian territory for generations. China did the exact same thing in 2024, again in 2023, when India hosted a high-profile G20 summit in Arunachal Pradesh. Before that, they did it in 2021, right after India's Vice President, M. Venkaiah Naidu, visited the state. They even did it back in 2017, after the Dalai Lama, a spiritual leader who China deeply dislikes, visited Arunachal Pradesh. You can clearly see the pattern, right? Every time India asserts itself or makes a significant diplomatic move in this region, China responds by renaming Indian territories and trying to claim ownership. All of this seems pretty harmless.
What?
Like, honestly, who cares if China randomly decides to rename a few places that India already fully controls anyway, right? But that's exactly where both you and I might be making a huge mistake. You see, history means something different to everyone.
Dude, no, like that. No, it's not. It's false. It's not a big deal. That is 100% a big deal, dude. What the fuck? You're not just gonna let some stranger come into your house and start renaming your children? Like, what? You imagine some weirdo just came into your house and was like, oh yeah, your kids now are called Tammy and Jimmy. Like, bro, get the fuck out of my house. You're not even supposed to be here. What do you mean? Like, no, they're not. Like, no, they're not.
Every country.
What?
Most nations look back at their history to understand their past, to learn from their mistakes, or to celebrate their achievements. But China sees history as a weapon. They use history strategically, carefully picking out bits and pieces that suit their agenda and erasing anything that they don't like or that challenges their claims.
Supplements, yeah.
Most people don't realize this, but rewriting history and renaming territories is exactly how China slowly took control of Tibet, Inner Mongolia, East Turkestan, and Manchuria. All these places were quietly renamed, their histories rewritten piece by piece, until the world simply accepted that they were always Chinese. Even places like Hong Kong and Macau, despite their unique identities, eventually fell victim to the same tactic. China will never say enough. The more they take, the hungrier they become. And now, they're coming for a piece of India. In this video, we're going to unravel centuries of hidden history, peel back layers of misinformation, and reveal the real truth behind the India-China border conflict. Now, Chinese bots definitely aren't going to like this one, so it's entirely up to you to help us spread the truth.
Dude, you never negotiate when it comes to a country like China, dude. You just tell them what the deal is, and that's it. You don't allow them to, like, no, because then you give them an inch, they want the whole mile, dude. Matter of fact, they want to take the whole world, dude. It's not just the mile. They want the whole platform, they want the facility. They want everything. They want to control it all. They won't even want to control what happens on the mile. So it's like,
if you
I
can
don't
please
know.
take a second and hit that like button and
Why
that
would
subscribe
you,
button down below.
like,
it really
give them
helps out
power?
our work tremendously. We appreciate you. You see, if we go all the way back to around the year 625 CE, Asia looks completely different. Massive empires ruled huge chunks of land. India had powerful empires, China had its own dynasties, and right between them stood Tibet. The Tibetan Empire was so massive that its borders stretched far beyond today's Tibet, covering huge territories that we now recognize as parts of India's Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. For about 2 centuries,
Holy
the Tibetan
crap.
Empire expanded aggressively in all directions, going toe-to-toe with China's Tang Dynasty, one of the strongest empires China has ever had. In fact, for decades, Tibet and China were fierce rivals, constantly fighting wars, signing treaties, breaking those treaties, and then fighting again. That's how intense things were at the
Oh,
time.
man.
And by the early 1600s, the Ladakh kingdom had evolved into a confident, prosperous, and deeply Buddhist kingdom, famous for its beautiful monasteries, thriving culture, and busy trade routes. Ladakh also formed close relationships with other Buddhist kingdoms, particularly Bhutan, which followed a different branch of Buddhism. Bhutan was Tibet's fierce rival, both politically and religiously. So when Ladakh started aligning itself with Bhutan, this made the rulers of Lhasa extremely suspicious and uncomfortable. All these tensions eventually exploded into open conflict. In 1679, Tibet, under the direct authority of the 5th Dalai Lama, launched a major military invasion against Ladakh, sending thousands of Tibetan troops storming across the mountains. Ladakh was strong, sure, but they were no match for the massive Tibetan army at that moment. The Tibetans quickly overwhelmed Ladakhi defenses, captured important towns, fortresses, and key territories in a matter of months. In desperation, the Ladakhi king, King Delek Namgyal, turned to the powerful Mughal Empire of northern India. The Mughals were at their peak, incredibly strong and influential. Seeing no other choice, the Ladakhi king sent urgent appeals to the Mughal governor in Kashmir, Ibrahim Khan, begging for military assistance to push back the invading Tibetan forces. Ibrahim Khan mobilized a huge Mughal army, which eventually overwhelmed the Tibetans, who had no choice but to pull back. For 5 exhausting years, Ladakh, Tibet, and their allies fought bitterly, until finally, in 1684, both sides were too tired and too worn down to keep fighting. They knew a lasting peace was necessary, and so the Ladakhi king and Tibet's 5th Dalai Lama came together to negotiate. That year, the historic Treaty of Tingmoskong was signed. Now, this treaty is extremely important because, for the first time, it clearly and officially drew the boundary between Ladakh and Tibet. In fact, the treaty specifically included a map that clearly marked the border at a landmark known as the Lahari Stream near Demchok. At that moment onward, Ladakh was
The Lahari Stream? Wait, hold on, what is that? Let's check. Oh, it's done. Hold on, give me 1 second. Frosted Mars. I have to fucking do this because now I forgot. Just give me 1 second. Add mods. What the hell is this shit called? Battlefront Expanded? What the fuck? What the what? Okay, whatever.
officially
What the hell
known
was this shit
as
called?
the Lahari Stream near Demchok. At that moment,
The Lahari Stream? What was that? Okay, I guess I can't find nothing. I don't know.
moment onward, Ladakh was officially recognized as a separate, independent kingdom, completely distinct from Tibet. Even today, this treaty is one of the strongest pieces of historical evidence that Ladakh was never truly a part of Tibet. We'll soon explain why this centuries-old treaty still matters so much today, and why China deliberately ignores it as if it never existed. But first, let's continue our story on how the Chinese got involved in Tibet. In the decades following the treaty, Ladakh continued to be ruled by its own family, although the kingdom gradually became less powerful and influential over time. Meanwhile, Tibet found itself threatened by invasions from powerful Mongol tribes called the Dzungars. Seeing an opportunity, China's Qing dynasty stepped in. Officially, the Qing emperors claimed they were just protecting Tibet from these Mongol invaders. But their real goal was to take control of Tibetan affairs. In 1720, Qing forces marched straight into Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, and swiftly drove out the Mongol invaders. But instead of leaving once their mission was accomplished,
Mongol
the Qing dynasty
invaders.
appointed an official governor known as the Amban to oversee Tibet. This marked the beginning of the never-ending Chinese involvement in Tibet's politics, culture, and territorial matters. From that moment on, Qing China actively influenced Tibet's internal issues, including political rivalries, diplomatic relationships, and crucially, border disputes, including those involving Ladakh. Throughout the rest of the 1700s, Tibet and Ladakh experienced a period of relative stability. But the early 1800s would soon bring another dramatic shift, one that would alter Ladakh's future completely. A new power had risen in northern India, the Sikh Empire. Based in Punjab and led by the legendary Maharaja Ranjit Singh, it was quickly becoming one of the most powerful and
Maharaja?
ambitious military forces in the region. Maharaja Ranjit Singh clearly understood how strategically important Ladakh was, especially because controlling Ladakh meant controlling critical mountain trade routes between India, Tibet, and Central Asia. So, in 1834, Ranjit Singh chose one of his bravest and most trusted generals, a legendary commander named General Zawarar Singh, to lead an expedition northward into Ladakh. Zawarar Singh's forces quickly overwhelmed the local Ladakhi resistance, decisively taking control of the region. In a very short period, Ladakh was firmly brought under the rule of Raja Gulab Singh of Jammu, a powerful ally and vassal of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. But Zorawar Singh didn't stop there. Ambitious, fearless, and eager for even greater conquest, he pushed his troops further north into Tibet itself. In 1841,
Damn,
he
he
moved to
just wanted
capture
the-
the isolated barren yet strategically vital plateau
Wanted the
we now know
duels,
as
yo.
Aksai Chin. Now, at the time, Aksai Chin might have seemed empty, remote, and insignificant, but this move to capture and control it would eventually set the stage for one of the biggest and most bitter territorial disputes between modern-day India and China. Now, at the time, Aksai Chin might have seemed empty, remote, and insignificant, but this move to capture and control it would eventually set the stage for one of the biggest and most bitter territorial disputes between modern-day India and China. But things didn't go according to Zorawar Singh's plan. Once his army marched into these harsh, freezing mountain regions, he quickly faced fierce and unexpected resistance. Tibetan forces, now backed by Chinese Qing troops, counterattacked with brutal strength and determination. Zorawar Singh's exhausted army was caught in the middle of a harsh Himalayan winter. Fierce fighting erupted in the mountains, and tragically, during a bloody winter battle, General Zorawar Singh himself was killed. His death threw his army into chaos, and the fighting reached a bloody stalemate. With no side clearly winning and both sides suffering heavy losses, leaders realized continuing fighting was pointless and costly, and so both sides reluctantly came to the
I would
negotiating
imagine
table.
so.
In September of 1842, they signed another crucial agreement, known as the Treaty of Chushul, supervised closely by Qing China. Just like the last one, this treaty was so incredibly important because it officially reconfirmed Ladakh's historical borders and explicitly recognized Ladakh as territory belonging to Raja Gulab Singh's Dogra Empire. Crucially, it stated clearly that neither Tibet nor Ladakh would try to expand further into each other's lands. But here's what's really interesting about the Treaty of Chushul. China itself supervised and signed off on it. In other words, China officially agreed
course
that
they
Aksai
did.
Chin, the same region China
And then
controls,
and then they're gonna double back on it and fucking not be on it. They're just gonna like literally on some like, bro. I mean, dude, like, don't fucking deal with this shit. Oh crap! Oops, camera froze. That's annoying. Yeah, this is exactly what I mean. This is why you don't just sign shit with China. You tell them what the fuck is gonna happen and that they're gonna fuck around and find out, and that's it.
today was part of Ladakh, and therefore rightfully belongs to India. By that time, the British Empire had firmly established its rule across large parts of India, and Ladakh became part of their massive new territory. And, along with Ladakh, the British also inherited the border problems. The biggest threat was Russia. You see, Russia was rapidly expanding its empire in Central Asia. The British were genuinely terrified that the Russians might push south, cross the Himalayas, and threaten their control over India. And soon began what historians call the Great Game. A serious geopolitical
Game.
competition, where both empires tried to outsmart the other through daring expeditions, carefully placed spies disguised as monks and traders, secret diplomatic missions, and intense negotiations over remote border territories. Both empires raced to gain influence and control over key strategic areas before the other could reach them first. To deal with this massive geopolitical threat, the British first needed clear maps and reliable information. That's why, from the early 1800s through the rest of the century, they launched one of the most ambitious mapping efforts in history, the famous Great Trigonometrical Survey. British surveyors and explorers undertook
Trigonometrical
dangerous
survey.
journeys, venturing deep into uncharted territories of Ladakh, Aksai Chin, Sikkim, Bhutan, Himachal Pradesh, and the entire northeast region, today known as Arunachal Pradesh. Legendary Indian explorers like Nain Singh Rawat and Kishan Singh, working secretly for the British, disguised themselves as local pilgrims, monks, or traders. They risked their lives traveling through Tibet and even into Chinese-controlled regions, carefully recording crucial geographical and political information. These expeditions created detailed and accurate maps, marking crucial mountain passes, valleys, rivers, and strategic territories, often for the very first time in history. But mapping alone wasn't enough. The British quickly realized that having direct borders with large empires like China or Russia was extremely dangerous. So they set out to create buffer states, small, independent kingdoms friendly to the British,
A
positioned
buffer state.
strategically between their Indian territories and powerful rivals. Two of the most important buffer states were Sikkim and Bhutan. In 1861, Britain secured
Sikkim. I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty sick name, dude. Sikkim. Just Sikkim.
Sikkim as a protectorate through the Treaty of Tumlong, clearly marking its borders and controlling its foreign relations. This effectively put a small, friendly state between British India and China's Tibet, providing a critical defensive shield. Similarly, in 1865, after a brief conflict, the British signed the Treaty of Sinchula with Bhutan, again clearly defining its borders and ensuring peaceful relations. With Bhutan and Sikkim, the British created friendly barriers, independent
Hold on, chat. Pa, ¿por qué no vas a la tienda a comprar? ¿Quién te ha dicho eso?
Independent kingdoms that kept China and Russia at a safe distance from British-controlled territory. Meanwhile, further west in Ladakh, things were even more complicated, especially around Aksai Chin. In 1865, a British surveyor, William Johnson, proposed a boundary line, now famously known as the Johnson Line, that clearly placed the whole of Aksai Chin firmly within Ladakh, and thus within British India. Interestingly, China never clearly rejected or officially objected to this line at that time, giving the Johnson Line significant historical weight even today. A later British official, George Macartney, proposed another border in 1899, placing much of Aksai Chin on China's side. But even here, China never really agreed clearly or responded, leaving confusion that still fuels arguments between India and China today. At the same time, something equally complicated was
Yes, aquí lo que dice la computadora, eso no es para lo que tú piensas. No, por eso que te digo, tú y mamá solo toman cualquier cosa que ustedes miren y piensan que le ayudan, no. Eso es para ayudarte a bajar de peso y para ayudarte con la sangre.
happening over in India's eastern frontier as well, the new region we now call Arunachal Pradesh. You see, back in 1914, British India decided it needed clear boundaries there too, so British diplomats met Tibetan representatives in Simla and signed the famous Simla Convention. Britain's negotiator, Henry McMahon,
Si tú quieres ver a esa tienda la que yo te dije y solo le dices que tú necesitas suplementos para el azúcar y ellos te ayudan. Ellos te dicen cuál es para eso. Tú lo que escogiste es algo para la sangre y para el peso. Y deben de tener a alguien que habla español, si no yo voy contigo. Yeah, like this is what I mean. My parents, oh man, like this is why I'd be scared when I move out again. It's like, dude, imagine if I wasn't here to tell them these things, they'd just be taking anything.
Proposed a bold idea. They split Tibet into two distinct parts. First, an autonomous region called Outer Tibet, which would be under the Tibetan government in Lhasa and protected by China, but without direct Chinese interference. Then, second, a region known as Inner Tibet, covering the eastern provinces of Kham and Amdo, which would directly be controlled by China. But there was one more crucial part of this agreement, and perhaps the most controversial. They had to draw a clear border between British India and Tibet itself. To achieve this, Henry McMahon sat down personally with Tibetan representatives, and together they carefully marked out a boundary following the highest ridges of the eastern Himalayas. But there was one more crucial part of this agreement, and perhaps the most controversial. They had to draw a clear border between British India and Tibet itself. To achieve this, Henry McMahon sat down personally with Tibetan representatives, and together they carefully marked out a boundary following the highest ridges of the eastern Himalayas. Regions like Tawang, today part of India's Arunachal Pradesh, were clearly placed south of this boundary, within British India's territory. And this carefully negotiated boundary would soon become famously known as the McMahon Line. Initially, even China's representative at these Simla talks showed cautious acceptance. He actually initialized the draft treaty as a preliminary sign of agreement. However, soon after, Beijing rejected the treaty altogether. China's leaders argued that Tibet had no legal right to independently sign treaties or redraw boundaries, especially without explicit Chinese approval. Because of this objection, China refused to formally sign the Simla Convention. In the end, only Britain and Tibet officially signed and accepted the treaty in July of 1914. The British, however, treated Tibet as fully capable of making decisions. As far as the British were concerned, the McMahon Line was now official, clearly defining the border in the east. Later, when India gained independence from Britain in 1947, it accepted these British-drawn boundaries, including the McMahon Line, as its official border in the east. India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was firm on the stance. He even published official maps in 1954, clearly showing these boundaries. He even declared India's borders are what they are, map or no map. But China had a completely different perspective. After Mao Zedong's Communist Revolution in 1949, the newly established People's Republic of China totally rejected every boundary or treaty drawn up during the British era. Mao considered these old agreements, whether from as far back as 1684, the 1842 treaties, or even the Simla Convention of 1914, as unfair, forced upon China by foreign imperialists. Instead, China insisted it would accept only those boundaries it considered historically correct or traditionally recognized. In simple terms, this meant Beijing intended to redraw its borders on its own terms, no matter what maps or agreements existed before, and no matter how other nations felt.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's what I mean. This is why, like, dude, China has a history of doing this, of just rewriting their own lines because they say it. You know, it's like literally rules for thee, not for me. We said it, so it has to happen. You know, we think we're Burger King. Have it my way.
And this mindset paved the way for the aggressive territorial claims we see today, like the atrocious 10-dash line in the South China Sea, China's relentless claim over Taiwan, and disputes over many other regions. This deep disagreement is exactly why Arunachal Pradesh remains such a hotly contested territory today. India stands firmly with the McMahon Line drawn in the 1914 Simla Convention, while China flatly rejects it. But at the time, even with border tensions and disagreements, both countries publicly presented themselves as close friends. India's Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, genuinely believed in building a friendly partnership between the two great Asian civilizations. Astonishingly, Nehru even declined an incredible offer from the United States to take China's permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council, insisting instead that China was the rightful holder of that position. A decision that, well, looking back now, many in India view as a colossal diplomatic mistake that the country still deeply regrets to this day. While Nehru was making these generous gestures, though, China wasn't exactly reciprocating the goodwill. Quietly, in the shadows, Beijing was steadily tightening its grip over Tibet. Just 1 year after Mao's Communist Revolution in 1949, Chinese troops aggressively pushed into Tibet, declaring they were liberating the region. A small and poorly equipped Tibetan army stood little to no chance and was quickly crushed. China even forced Tibetan representatives into signing the controversial 17-point agreement, officially confirming Chinese sovereignty and dominance over Tibet. In the following years, China's control became increasingly harsh and oppressive. Tibetan culture, religion, and independence were aggressively suppressed, and eventually conditions became unbearable. By 1959, the tensions exploded, and Tibetans openly rebelled against Chinese rule. Fearing for his life, Tibet's spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, fled to India, seeking refuge and safety. Even then, India was still trying to win over China's trust through practical, friendly gestures. In fact, in 1952, Nehru's government genuinely agreed to provide over 2,500 tons of rice to Chinese soldiers in Tibet, because China's own supply lines were overstretched. The Indian government genuinely believed that such gestures of goodwill would help build lasting trust and friendships between the two neighbors. Unfortunately, this generosity backfired spectacularly. Behind closed doors, Chinese leaders privately mocked Nehru's kindness and dismissed it as a sign of weakness, even deriding his mindset as naive and bourgeoisie. Taking advantage of India's goodwill, China began quietly making aggressive moves behind India.
This is what I mean, dude. This is exactly what I mean. These guys have a history of doing this shit. This is why you don't fucking do, like, you know, oh my god. This is why you don't do fair trade with them. You tell them what you're going to do and you order them to do it. And you get them into submission, because if you, the CCP is not a government that can, you know, they don't know how to do anything fairly. They're always trying to hoodwink you or tiddlewink you or, you know, piss on your leg and tell you that it's freaking raining.
Back. Between 1951 and 1957, Chinese engineers secretly constructed a
Trying to
massive
pull on your
strategic
dick and
highway
shit.
right through Aksai Chin, territory India strongly believed belonged to them. This infamous road, known today as the G219 highway, stretched an astonishing 1,200 kilometers through barren, high-altitude terrain, connecting China's provinces of Xinjiang and Tibet. China built this huge road without even informing India, let alone seeking permission. India only discovered the shocking intrusion by accident, sometime between 1957 and 1958. Incredibly,
accident
it's
is
said an
crazy.
Indian officer stumbled across a Chinese newspaper article openly mentioning the completed highway. India's government was totally blindsided. Prime Minister Nehru immediately reacted with shock and anger, publicly asserting India's territorial claims by publishing detailed official maps that clearly marked Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh as part of India. China responded with counterclaims. Things dramatically escalated in 1959 after the Dalai Lama's dramatic escape to India sparked global attention. Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai sent a sharply worded letter to Nehru, explicitly rejecting India's claimed border along the McMahon Line in Arunachal Pradesh. Zhou also declared that the Ladakh border, including Aksai Chin, had never been properly defined. Diplomatic exchanges rapidly deteriorated into heated arguments. China justified its claims by citing historical reasons, like ancient caravan routes passing through Aksai Chin, and religious links connecting Tibet to Arunachal's Tawang Monastery. India firmly stood its ground, insisting the British-era treaties, clearly documented and historically signed, were entirely valid and non-negotiable. In 1960, Premier Zhou Enlai even tried offering Nehru a compromise, a so-called package deal. China would officially recognize India's claims in Arunachal Pradesh along the McMahon Line if, in exchange, India accepted Chinese control over Aksai Chin. But Nehru flatly refused this deal, famously stating that India wouldn't surrender even an inch of Indian land. By 1961, tensions were rapidly escalating.
It said, we'll let you take your land back if you give us another piece of your land. Like, what the fuck? No, motherfucker. You give us all the land back, you idiot. What? Not your land? Like, what? Can you imagine someone coming into your store, taking something without paying, walking out, and you're like, dude, give me back that shit that you just stole. And you're like, all right, dude, I'll give it back to you if you give me, like, another soda or something. Like, what the fuck? No! What?
Both Indian and Chinese militaries began aggressive patrols and set up forward outposts in disputed areas, frequently encountering each other. Minor clashes became increasingly common. Both sides felt a war was looming. The stage was now set, tragically and inevitably, for full-blown conflict. Finally, on October 20th, 1962, China launched a sudden and massive attack, coincidentally at the same time when the world was busy worrying about the Cuban Missile Crisis. The People's Liberation Army struck simultaneously in both disputed sectors. Aksai Chin in Ladakh, the west, Indian troops were isolated, ill-equipped, and far outnumbered, which is why China quickly secured the entire Aksai Chin Plateau. Meanwhile, in the east, waves of Chinese forces crossed the McMahon Line, rapidly overrunning Indian positions in the Nam Kha Chu Valley. Despite heroic resistance in several areas, Indian forces were poorly prepared and badly outnumbered. The Chinese advanced deep into Arunachal, even capturing the strategic town of Tawang. The war was short, but devastating. Thousands of Indian troops were killed or captured, and morale collapsed. Then, suddenly, China abruptly declared a ceasefire on November 21st, 1962. Even more surprising, they voluntarily withdrew their troops from Arunachal Pradesh, pulling back behind the McMahon Line and allowing India to regain control. But in the west, China firmly kept control of Aksai Chin, roughly 38,000 square kilometers, never returning it to India, and they still hold it today. At this point, the term the Line of Actual Control, the LAC, was born. This became the de facto military border, the line where both armies stopped at the end of the conflict. But crucially, this LAC was never officially marked or agreed upon. Both India and China have different perceptions of exactly where this line runs, even how long it is, and disputes continue to erupt periodically along its undefined stretches. After the humiliating 1962 defeat, India worked hard to rebuild its military capabilities and rethink its China policy. Meanwhile, Mao's China considered its job done. As Mao said, China had taught India a lesson. For a while, uneasy
Oh,
peace
yeah, they
settled
taught
at the
India a
borders,
lesson?
but it didn't last long. In 1967, tensions flared again at a high-altitude mountain pass called Natu La, situated right between the Indian protectorate of Sikkim and Chinese-controlled Tibet. Unlike 1962, this time India was better prepared, with troops ready and determined to fight back. A simple argument over border fencing quickly escalated into a full-blown gunfire. Both sides opened fire with mortars and machine guns.
The
India's
border
artillery
fencing
fired
is
back
crazy.
with devastating accuracy. After days of fighting, around 80 Indian soldiers were killed. But Chinese losses were even heavier, estimated between 300 and 400 soldiers. For India, despite the human cost, this fight at Natu La was a psychological victory. A strong signal to China that India
Sorry, guys, I'm, like,
wouldn't be
fixing one of
bullied
my
at the border anymore. The fighting at Natu La exposed another huge strategic vulnerability for India. The small Himalayan kingdom of Sikkim and the extremely narrow Siliguri Corridor, commonly called the Chicken's Neck. The Siliguri Corridor is just about 20
Yep, we talked
kilometers
about that
wide
last
at
time,
its
guys.
narrowest point and connects the entire northeast of India to the rest of the country. If this corridor were ever captured or cut off, India's northeastern states could be entirely isolated. Because of this, India was extremely sensitive about the security in this region. To better secure this vulnerable area, India formally annexed Sikkim in 1975, making it an official Indian state through a referendum, something China bitterly opposed and refused to recognize for decades. But still, vulnerability in the region still exists. Indian planners constantly worried about the possibility of Chinese forces cutting off the northeast by attacking near strategic points like Doklam, a fear that dramatically resurfaced decades later in the Doklam crisis of 2017. After the bloodshed at Natu La in 1967, both nations seemed eager to avoid further military conflict. China was soon preoccupied with massive internal chaos during the Cultural Revolution, and India faced other challenges like wars with Pakistan and internal issues. By the late 1980s, both countries saw the benefit of calming border tensions. Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi even
chilling out?
visited
Yeah,
China in
literally just, like,
1988,
chilling the fuck
initiating
out.
a fresh start. The two sides signed important agreements in 1993 and 1996, known as Peace and Tranquility Agreements, to maintain calm along their disputed border. One of the most unusual rules agreed upon
So
in
much for peace
1996
now.
was the no guns rule. Both armies explicitly agreed not to fire guns or explosives within 2 kilometers of the LAC. Soldiers carried guns mostly for protection against wildlife, but had clear orders never to shoot during confrontations. Instead, any face-offs would be settled with kicks, punches, sticks, and stones, and no bullets. It might seem strange, but this rule actually worked well for decades, helping to prevent small arguments from spiraling into serious conflicts. Meanwhile,
serious,
throughout
yeah.
the
They just
1990s and
chill out,
2000s, China steadily improved its position along the disputed border. They undertook a
That's pretty
massive
fire.
infrastructure building spree, building and paving new roads,
That's where
setting up air
those videos
bases,
exist. I always wonder why there was like mad videos of just Indian soldiers just fucking fighting with Chinese soldiers just fighting randomly with Indian soldiers, and I always just thought that was funny. But I guess there was actually a reason, and it was actually like a pretty cool reason, to prevent like actual wars. It's pretty sweet. I would say that's pretty manly.
establishing rail lines like the ambitious Qinghai Tibet Railway to Lhasa in 2006, and creating frontier villages that appeared civilian but could easily serve military purposes. This extensive infrastructure enabled China to move soldiers and equipment swiftly along the LAC. But on the other side, India lagged behind, badly. Indian border roads remained poor or non-existent, partially by intentional design. India believed that poor roads might slow down a potential Chinese invasion, and partially due to bureaucratic inefficiencies, environmental concerns, and political issues common in a democracy. For decades, Indian analysts warned about this imbalance and pushed the government to catch up. It often took Indian troops days to reach sensitive border areas that Chinese soldiers could have driven up to within hours. Finally, India woke up to this gap in the late 2000s, and especially the 2010s, pouring billions of dollars into improving border roads through agencies like Border Roads Organization. But the bigger problem than the infrastructure gap was China's cunning strategy at the border, something the people called salami slicing. Instead of launching a large, obvious invasion, China would
It's
slowly
salami
and carefully
slicing?
chip away at border territories bit by bit, taking small slices of land at a time. The PLA would move slightly forward, preventing Indian patrols or local herders from accessing certain regions, and then quietly claim these areas as having always belonged to China. Over time, these tiny slices added up significantly. By early 2020, before the deadly clash at Galwan Valley, Indian observers were already warning that China had gradually shifted the LAC westward in many areas. According to an internal report, Indian forces lost regular access to 26 out of 65 traditional patrolling points in eastern Ladakh. Over time, Chinese troops gradually blocked Indian patrol routes, creating what they called buffer zones. Essentially, now areas controlled by China, even though they were historically patrolled freely by Indian soldiers. Important strategic areas, like the Depsang Plains, where Indian patrols haven't been allowed since
The
2013,
Depsang Plains.
and places near Pangong Tso and Gorga quietly slipped out of India's grip, effectively becoming off-limits. Combine this with China's ongoing tactic of renaming Indian territories and rewriting history, and you've got a perfect storm brewing at the border. At this point, it's not a question of if, but when China will attack next. And given that both of these Asian giants possess nuclear arsenals, there's no telling if or when a new conflict could escalate dangerously close to a breaking point. But it's also important to realize that China's gradual invasion doesn't always stay bloodless. Take Doklam in 2017, for example. Like we mentioned earlier, Doklam overlooked
What's
India's
Doklam?
incredibly vulnerable Chicken's Neck. When Chinese troops suddenly began extending a road into Doklam, a territory Bhutan says is theirs, India immediately stepped in at Bhutan's request. Indian soldiers moved in and blocked the construction crew physically. Both armies stood just meters apart, eyeball to eyeball, for over 2 months. The situation was extremely tense and came dangerously close to a full-blown conflict. Eventually, diplomatic pressures made both sides back off. China
That's
stopped building,
crazy,
and India
dude.
withdrew. Then, in
They were
2020,
just-
as the world was busy fighting
Oh,
COVID-19,
man, I can already
China
imagine
quietly
having
moved
fucking fights
thousands
that
of
probably
soldiers
was.
forward at
Like
several
actual
key
people
points in
boxing
eastern
there.
Ladakh. It started around a lake called Pangong Tso, where both armies patrolled regularly along ridges called fingers. China suddenly moved
Yo,
forward,
what's going on,
blocking
Mr.
Indian
Sega?
soldiers from patrolling their usual routes. Similar Chinese advances took place in other critical areas like Gorga, Hot Springs, and Depsang. India quickly rushed reinforcements, leading to a tense standoff. Then on June 15th, 2020,
Damn it, I got
tensions escalated
fucking-
in the Galwan Valley. Soldiers
Doing
fought
alright.
with their bare hands, stones, clubs wrapped in
How about
barbed
you?
wire,
You're having a
and
good
metal
Memorial
rods
Day?
with nails in them. By morning, 20 Indian
what
soldiers
the-
were dead. China officially admitted to only 4 deaths, but independent reports indicated their losses were over 40. Galwan deeply shocked and angered India, shattering any remaining trust. Although the government tried to avoid escalation, public outrage forced India to toughen its stance. After Galwan, India and China held multiple negotiations. They agreed to partially disengage and create what they called buffer zones. But, like I explained earlier, these zones ended up causing more trouble for India. Even today, China has kept up its relentless strategy of biting away bits of India's territory, trying repeatedly to provoke a reaction, constantly testing India's patience and pushing it closer and closer to another major confrontation. And the 1,000 cuts we talked about in the intro, that's exactly where other nations come
Just
into play.
chilling, dude.
You
That's
see,
good.
India
That's
is
good.
surrounded
We'll
by
play some
several
Star Wars in
smaller
a bit. I'm
countries
just
like
recording a video right
Bhutan,
now.
Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Pakistan.
Bangladesh.
Historically, these countries acted like a protective barrier, a natural buffer, keeping China at a safe distance, or at least they used to. Traditionally, these neighbors
Like a-
leaned towards
like a bunch of
India,
human
but over the
meat
years, China
shields.
has carefully and steadily
If you
chipped
must.
away at India's influence, using the exact same tactics of land grabs, relentless economic pressure, and, when nothing else works, bribery and political manipulation. Bangladesh has already tilted heavily towards China. Sri Lanka is practically trapped in Beijing's debt grip.
Let me go wash
And
my
Pakistan
hands.
has willingly become China's puppet, and it might only be a matter of time before
Hold on, I'll be back. Give me a second. Oh, crappiola. Oh shit, dude. We got a YouTube guy in here, dude. Oh, yeah. Mr. Saita.
before others follow. And once they do,
Sorry, I was
every one
cleaning
of these
some
neighbors
shit.
would
Almost
deliver their own tiny
flipping my
cuts.
dad.
Illegal infiltration from Bangladesh flooding India's border states, terrorist attacks supported by Pakistan, Sri Lanka handing strategic...
Whoa. Why is my mic not connecting? What the? What the H? That is annoying.
ports
as hell.
directly to Chinese hands, Nepal subtly shifting its alliances away from India towards Beijing, you get the idea. Individually, these incidents might seem small and isolated, but when you add them up over time, months, years, the damage becomes catastrophic, just like thousands of tiny cuts slowly bleeding India out. Take Bhutan, for example. For decades, this tiny Himalayan kingdom has looked up to India as its protector and ally. And it still does, which is why China is slowly encroaching into Bhutanese territory. Satellite images and leaked reports reveal China quietly building entire villages, military outposts, and infrastructure deep within Bhutan. Areas like the sacred Bayol Kenpochong Valley, which is central to Bhutanese cultural identity, now has Chinese flags flying over them. And Bhutan,
Oh,
with its
God.
small army and limited resources, can't do much other than just protest. Then there's Nepal. Historically, Nepal has been culturally close and politically aligned with India. But over the past decade, Beijing's presence in Nepal has
Nepal?
grown tremendously. Chinese money now pours into Nepal,
What the-
funding highways, airports, power plants, and infrastructure projects. Nepali leaders often lean towards China, giving in to pressure from Beijing, even cracking down on Tibetan refugees living within their borders to keep China happy. And there have been reports of quiet Chinese encroachment into Nepali territory as well. Villagers and local officials in Nepal's Humla district claim Chinese border markers have moved mysteriously, eating into their land bit by bit. Sound
Oh, there.
familiar? Next is Bangladesh. For decades, Bangladesh maintained a close friendship with India, sharing historic ties. But lately, China's economic investments in Bangladesh have skyrocketed. Massive infrastructure projects, deep sea ports, and special economic zones are popping up across Bangladesh, funded by Chinese loans. Not to mention that they come with strings attached, carefully designed so the borrowing nation struggles to repay them. When the debt inevitably piles up, China steps in, not as a helping hand, but to claim strategic assets or political concessions. Maybe that's why, on Beijing's command, Bangladesh is sending millions of
Political
Bangladeshi migrants
concessions.
across illegally into India, creating demographic stress and sometimes sparking communal tensions.
Oh,
It's an
so they're
indirect,
trying to,
subtle challenge, one of those
you know,
thousand small
hoodwink
cuts.
them.
Sri Lanka's case is even more clear-cut. When Sri Lanka struggled to pay back huge debts from Chinese-funded projects, China conveniently stepped in. Not to forgive the debt, no, but to take control of critical assets.
No.
The Hambantota port, strategically located along key shipping routes, is now effectively Chinese territory, leasing to Beijing for 99 years. From there, China could potentially dock naval ships. India is now forced to deal with a Chinese presence directly to its south. Even Myanmar is increasingly falling into China's orbit. Chinese companies dominate Myanmar's economy, and China funds
Myanmar.
rebel militias in Myanmar's borderlands, creating chaos and instability right along India's northeastern border. And lastly, there's Pakistan, India's arch nemesis, which has practically become a Chinese puppet at this point. But Pakistan is a bit different. China openly calls Pakistan its iron brother, and has invested tens of billions into the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor.
Oh yeah, it's
A
Iron
huge
Brother.
infrastructure project that runs through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, land that legally belongs to India. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Pakistan has,
I
for
would
decades,
imagine so.
systematically supported,
I would imagine there's
funded,
way
and
more
sheltered
shit,
terror
yeah.
groups aimed directly at India. These groups, like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba, have carried out brutal attacks on Indian soil. Mumbai in 2008, Pathankot in 2006, Pulwama in 2019, and most recently, Pahalgam in 2025, killing hundreds of innocent civilians and soldiers. And it's no secret who backs them. Pakistani intelligence services, notably the ISI, have openly trained and equipped terrorists, using terror as a direct weapon against India. Now, with China's support, Pakistan feels bolder than ever. Beijing provides Pakistan with diplomatic cover at the UN, shielding known terrorists from sanctions and global blacklists. Then there's the human side. Pakistan's oppression in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan. These areas are rightfully India's territories, yet they suffered decades of atrocities. Political repression, human rights abuses, forced disappearances, torture, and relentless suppression. Pakistan is perhaps the sharpest knife in China's arsenal, one that has already inflicted hundreds of deep, painful
China
cuts
is
to
literally
India.
just utilizing
When you step back
Pakistan.
and look at this whole picture, you see exactly how dangerous China's strategy really is. Slowly, quietly, methodically, China is cutting off India's influence, isolating India in its own backyard. They're gradually weakening
100%.
every neighboring ally, strategically bribing or bullying smaller nations into submission, and slowly eroding India's borders inch by inch through relentless propaganda, historical revisionism, and subtle, calculated aggression. By renaming towns in Arunachal Pradesh, rewriting historical records, building illegal infrastructure deep inside of
I'm,
Bhutan,
like, fixing one of
flooding
my
Bangladesh's border
fingers
with
that
economic
broke
traps,
last week.
turning Pakistan into a terror-sponsoring puppet, and systematically spreading misinformation behind their massive Great Firewall, China is slowly reshaping reality itself. This is exactly why understanding China's information warfare is crucial. Because recognizing these small cuts today could mean the difference between preserving your nation's borders tomorrow or waking up one day to find the map has been completely redrawn.
Completely changed.
Thanks for watching.
Yep. It's crazy, dude. What was that? YouTube is still reviewing our channel, and if we're banned or not, watch the video below for more details. Yeah, dude. That's crazy. That's honestly crazy. I still can't believe YouTube is really trying to silence. Well, I can't believe fucking the CCP is rather using YouTube to try to silence Business Basics from talking about this stuff. You're not gonna silence me, bucko. You're not gonna silence me. Oh no. Oh no. Ooh, I didn't know I could do that. Oh, that's much better. Anyways, I'm honestly not surprised about anything in this video. You know, that's why history is called history, man. Because this, you know, they have like a proven track record of doing the shiza. So, you know, I wouldn't really, you know, expect any different. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If there's anything that you guys think I should cover, leave a link to it in the comment below. And yeah, make sure to check out Business Basics and subscribe. Make sure if you guys have Twitter, repost that stuff so that way he can get his channel back. It's messed up, man. It's messed up.